And it says here, people can see my screen. So can you see the PowerPoint slides that are before you here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Excellent. So this is an encore presentation of some training we did last year. This is we called it Mastering the Art of Creative Thinking and Innovation. And apparently this, there was some pretty good word of mouth on this, because last year, I remember we had a hard time getting enough to do the training. And then this year, the class filled up within a matter of about 2 or 3 days. So I was really encouraged with the feedback we are getting on this. Everyone who attended last year really got a lot out of it. And creative thinking and innovation, I think, is a very stimulating topic. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I sent you a workbook, and I hope everybody has had the opportunity to go through that workbook, and you've got it at your disposal there to write on and whatnot. What we decided to do last year.
Was that electronic? Was that electronic workbook?
Yeah, it was the attachment to the email that I sent with this link.
Okay.
Right. So.
Okay.
Excuse me. Did everyone have an opportunity to take a look at that? Did everybody get it? First of all, did anybody not realize that there was that was attached to your? At any rate,
I got it. I see it now. Yep.
Okay.
The attachment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at any rate, you know, if you'd like, you can open it there at your computer and have it as a reference. I am going to be referring to it, and there was a little bit of homework that I asked you to do. The self-assessment on page 3. We're going to discuss that a little bit, but what we decided to do, because this is a full day's worth or more of training in that workbook. What we've decided to do is focus on just a few of the sessions in there. Session 2 and 7 and 8 we will cover today, and then sessions 9 and 10 we will cover, and I think 11 as well. We will cover next Wednesday. And the rest of it you can use as a reference. I thought that there's a lot of really good stuff in that book that we're not going to cover. So please make use of that as a reference. Read through it, and you'll get a lot of good ideas, I think, from going through that. So let's go ahead and jump right into session 2, which is, what is creativity and innovation? My introduction to this topic was back in the mid-2000s, 2005. I attended a big offsite out west that was hosted by a guy named Rolf Smith, and it was for the purpose of the base realignment and closure at Aberdeen Proving Ground. And we did like a 4-day offsite to do a big innovation project on how we were going to, how the Aberdeen Proving Ground was going to change as a result of base realignment and closure, all the new organizations coming on, and what we needed to do to accommodate that so it went smoothly. And after that, I went out to a place in Colorado called the School for Innovators. And it was an 8 days, 16-hour days of training on creativity and innovation. It's something that I really am energized by. And in that 8-day workshop, I learned a whole lot about not only about how I think, but how different people think and how different people use their creativity. And this workshop that we have here today is a pretty good overview of that subject. And so we'll be able to sort of scratch the surface of the a lot of the in-depth topics related to this. Creativity is, I want you to think of creativity as the generation of ideas in the attempt to solve a problem or produce something new. And I want you to think of innovation as the implementation of ideas generated from the creative process. So think of creativity, innovation, and problem solving as something that, three things that are sort of interlinked. If problem solving is the process that you go through, creativity is the fuel. Creativity fuels the problem solving process, and then innovation is the outcome. Innovation is change. So what we're doing when we use our creativity is we are creating and implementing change. And that's really all it is. Everyone innovates, everyone creates change, and everyone implements change. So it's good to think of everyone who has to solve problems on a daily basis, which we all do in our jobs. Everyone who has to solve problems is an innovator. So I am dubbing everyone attending today as an innovator. So congratulations, you're an innovator. And we're going to learn today how to be better innovators. Let's start with a little exercise that I use and I think probably, Greg, didn't we do this one last year in the strategic thinking workshop? I'm pretty sure that we did, but for the rest of you, so you can't cheat, but for the rest of you, this will be something new. This is a problem-solving exercise that I like to do in a group to show you how different people approach creativity, problem-solving, and innovation. So I want you to get something to write with and something to write on. You can write on your workbook or whatever. And I want you to do this. So I'll read this to you. This motley crew of athletes here is a community rec softball team. So you're the coach of this softball team, and your team won the conference championship and is good enough to qualify for a special invitation-only postseason tournament. However, you only have the budget large enough to send 12 of the players on your 15-player roster to the tournament. So first, I want you to write down, define the problem that you're trying to solve. Okay, so you write down what problem you think you're trying to solve, and then state how you go about solving it. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do this. So go ahead and do this, define the problem, and then state how you go about solving it. Now we'll give you a couple of minutes. Now, if I'm Joan, I need a little help here.
What can I do?
When I'm in this sharing the screen mode here, I can't see the chat. Oh, there we go. I just realized I didn't start recording.
I did.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm going to use this chat function as much as I can to facilitate some of our conversations here and getting me feedback, because I can't Does this have a raise your hand function, Joan?
Ooh.
I don't think it does. I don't see it.
Yeah.
Oh, Jamie raised her hand.
Oh, okay.
Jamie, teach the group how to do that.
I just went down to the bottom where I have my mute, video, share, and there's three little dots. I
Uh-huh.
clicked on the three little dots and there's an option to raise hand.
Okay. Awesome. Can everyone see when somebody raises their hand, or is it just me and Joan?
We can see it.
Okay, good.
That's interesting because the three little dot menu is not giving me a raise hand option.
Yeah, same here.
Oh,
Me neither.
No, I found the raise hand.
Jamie's special.
If you click on participants, the little picture down at the bottom look like a person. If you go up to
Yeah.
the top where the search box is, if you click on those three little lines going across there, it'll show raised hands. Right now it shows two people raised their hand. It doesn't tell me who they are, even though I know I'm one of them. So it must be me and Jamie. So that's where I found the raised hands.
Oh, okay. I
Okay.
see what you do. You highlight your name while you're there, and there's a thing where it says, when you highlight your name,
Right,
yeah, you got a hand there.
right.
oh,
Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and whoops. Yeah. If you want to keep working on that, that's fine. I want to discuss something here, and then we'll go over your responses here in a minute. And I know some of you are already started sharing your responses. Different people innovate in different ways. And I first learned about this from a guy named Curtin, who wrote a book, several books actually, on creative styles. Curtin was an organizational psychologist, and he did a lot of research about creativity in organizations. And his theories about creativity didn't deal with like level of creativity, because there are people who are more talented, more creative than others. He wanted to look not at level, but of style. He wanted to look at the different ways that people are creative, and he was able to lay out sort of a continuum between two extremes that he called adaptive and innovative. And on the one extreme there, we usually put it on the left. Adaptive creativity is it's the desire to create the new and improved. So when you go in to a situation, you look to make things more efficient. You look to increase the quality. You look to enhance productivity. You look to take what's there and make it work better. So new and improved. And then on the other end is a creative style called innovative, which he defined as people who seek the new and different. So people who are more innovative will look at what other folks are doing and try to copy and adapt that to what they're doing. They will try to create breakthroughs, things that are more transformational, and look to seek to do what is currently impossible. So big change. And he actually created an assessment that enables you to sort of see where you are on the, in that continuum between purely adaptive and purely innovative. So when I talk to individuals about their creativity, I ask the question, what are you? What do you think, what am I? What do I think I am here? Where does my creativity lie on those scales? And we all possess the ability to be creative, but we all aren't creative in the same way. Some people are more adaptive, some people are more innovative. So let's take a look at this. I know that you've been chatting chatting this up, but I see sort of the flavor of your responses here. Were there any of you who came up with this solution? We need to figure out the best way to select the 12 players who should represent our team in the tournament. Was there anybody who defined the problem along those lines? Anyone? If anyone did, say yes. I'm getting a lot of no's.
I did actually. I was being facetious doing it, but I did. And I didn't
Okay.
remember this from back in the spring or
That's right.
winter or
That's
whatever.
right. Greg was being cooperative because he knew this group wouldn't pick this option. Okay. So what were some of the ways that you came up with solving this? Greg?
Sandy, I was saying, I'm not sure, when you have a budget, you have the opportunity to allocate your funds a certain way. So there were two things I said. Either you have a fundraiser or you look at your budget and see how you can allocate your funds differently.
Right. So because very few, meaning one person, selected this, generally what I get from the people who select this is some sort of merit-based solution. In other words, if I can only send 12 people, we need to pick out the 12 best players in some way, maybe the best fielders or the best hitters or whatever, but in some analytical merit-based approach. But most of the people in this group selected a variation of this solution. And this is, we need to figure out how to raise enough money to send all 15 players. And this is, you guys have been coming up with all sorts of creative solutions for that. Fundraisers. Let's see what we got here. See, somebody even admonished Greg. It's not fair to pick, just to pick the 12 best. So shame on you, Greg. Believe it or not, though, I generally get several people in a group, even those who work with clients on a regular basis, who will pick that first alternative there. And it's interesting. I think this is it's really a good teaching point, I believe, to understand the perspective here and what it says about your creativity. A lot of what has to do with the creative style of the individual is involved with what how you feel about structure. So everyone has and relies upon a lot of structure in your life. And some people need more structure than others, and some people tend to approach problems in a very structured way. So the solution on the top accepts the constraint that I put on it as a limiting factor. In other words, they take that assumption and say, okay, I can't do anything about the fact that we only have enough money to send the 12 people. So I have to work within the structure of the problem. And that's how you come up with sort of an analytical approach, a merit-based approach to select the 12. But those of you who looked at this and came up with solutions around the bottom said, I don't accept the constraints of the problem. I don't consider the fact that we don't have enough money to be a constraint. The fact that we don't have enough money is the problem. So we need to break that constraint. We need to break that structure, and we need to figure out how to sort of redefine it in such a way that it's no longer a constraint. And there's lots of different ways that you can solve the problem if you break that structure. And so understand that the different ways that we look at a problem and perceive the problem have to do with our own creative style. It also has a lot to do with what you do and what you've learned over the years as part of your career. I did this to a group of teachers once, and nearly 100% of them, regardless of their creative style, picked the second alternative. And it was because they knew that the parents of the people who weren't selected to go would raise a fit if they weren't able to include everyone. So for those of you who selected that, how many of you would say, if we can't send everyone, then we're not going to send anyone? Would you take it that far?
Well, I guess for me, first of all, I gave my answer of cut the team down somewhat facetiously, but I think that's something that needs to be a group decision, right? Not imposed from on high, but if you go to the group and say, hey, we have a chance at this, but we only have funds for 12 and everybody's on board with that, that's a much different situation than saying, I'm sorry, you, and you're going to have to stay home. I also, just as a comment, I think backing up to your statement about kind of breaking through the established criteria, the limits that are set on the problem, it's really about accepting different constraints on the problem in terms of coming up with these two different solutions, right? So the first answer there, when you say let's send 12, accepts the constraint that we have limited funding, but doesn't accept the constraint of team size, whereas the other one says we need to send all 15 people, and the funding is the problem.
Right. It shines a light on how you define the problem, really. And the constraint as being the problem. A few of you said that you wouldn't take it that far. In other words, you wouldn't say if everyone can't go, then then we're just not going to participate. So for those of you who said that, let me ask you, Sharon, you're one of the ones who said that you wouldn't take it that far. What would you do in the case that you couldn't come up with the adequate funds to send everybody? What would be your fallback position?
It is kind of interesting because this actually happened way back in high school. I'm kind of surprised I can think back that far, but it involved a chorus. And there was not enough money to send everyone. And once the entire group found that out, then the next step was, okay, so how much can each person contribute to their own expense? And then what was left, that's the way we all got to participate.
I see.
And to me, it's kind of like, and I think my supervisor Denise had just mentioned it earlier, if we're playing all year or doing whatever all year, all 15 people gave 100% of their energies and their time and their confidence and the productivity. So how could you actually say to a person, well, I really don't value what you did enough to include you? So I came more or less, though, from a personal perspective in terms of how would it make the person feel that was not chosen.
So in other words, your approach would be sort of a shared burden.
Yes, and it worked. It worked because when you work that closely with everyone else, nobody in our group, and I think we had at that time like maybe about 25 people, nobody wanted to see any one person left out.
Well, that's definitely a common sentiment when you're part of a team, especially a team that works well together, is you want to win as a team. And so I thought I saw somebody, Jessica, you raised your hand. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I put it in chat, but I was just, I've been a coach, and I guess I'm not a big fan of the way a lot of at least club level sports works, and they do by all means take the top top 12 and leave the other 3 and don't think twice about it. In a lot of cases, I was on a team that had that attitude that, top performers got the reward, and, the ones on the bottom, that was seen as something to work for, and an appropriate consequence, so to speak. And not that sits well with me, but that was the pervasive, environment that I was working in at the time. And I wouldn't say that is an approach I would take. I mean, I think I would agree with most everyone else's ideas for helping those last 3 players come. But I wouldn't also go so far as to deny the top players who are trying to get college scholarships or trying to get some goal, the option of going either.
Right. So it's not as cut and dry. There are sort of different forces pulling you in different directions here when it comes right down to it. Christopher, did you have?
Yes, I agree with Jessica in some sentiments. I also would say it takes 9 players to play softball, and 12 is more than enough to represent a team in the tournament. And I think the strongest players should have that opportunity to attend to represent the entire team, similar to an all-star game where the best players are selected, or in some state tournaments, the fastest in the track meet are selected. So I think there's nothing wrong with having the best players represent the entire team. And if they come back with the championship, the entire team wins that, even if the 3 are left behind.
You see, and welcome to the glory of group problem solving, because now we're starting to hear more perspectives on the matter, and I like this. I don't want to dwell too much more, because I know for some of you, this is sort of a personal problem that I've laid out here, something that you really identify with personally. I wanted to do this as an example of how the way you frame the problem leads to how you solve the problem, and that different people can take a look at the same situation and frame the problem totally differently. And it really has to do with your creativity and your perspective. Somebody mentioned empathy in the chat box. It does, in this particular case, your degree of empathy has a lot to do with how you frame problems. Whether or not you're an analytical thinker has influences how you frame problems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you bring your personality into it, and that has a lot to do with how you will define the problem and the solutions that come forth. Let's see. Okay. So for those, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. For those of you who took the personality assessment, I want to, Mardia, did you want to say something?
No, it was just sort of giving my perspective on what everybody else had said about the team. So in line with what you said, you didn't want to spend too much time on it, so we're okay.
Okay, cool. For those of you who took the DISC Plus assessment, I wanted to give you the opportunity to have a takeaway and have something that will give you a little bit more insight and self-awareness. And I could spend half a day talking about this, but I'm not going to. The DISC is the piece of this assessment that I wanted to talk about briefly, because it does have some bearing on your creativity. So for those of you who took this, and just because you didn't take it doesn't mean that you can't take it. You can certainly take it afterwards if you'd like. But I think about 12 of you took this assessment. And the DISC is a behavioral assessment, and it looks at 4 different aspects of your behaviors, 4 different dimensions of behavior. And those 4 are decisive, interactive, stabilizing, and cautious. So I'm going to go through each one of these very quickly. The D is for decisive, and it looks at how you approach problems and make decisions. So it's very pertinent. So a person with a very high D score coming out of this assessment tend to be a very demanding, driving, forceful, daring individuals who will really go after problems and attack problems and make quick decisions because they don't want to deal with this problem for very long. It's an obstacle in their path and they want to power their way through it. Whereas people with a lower D score tend to be more contemplative and deliberate and agreeable. They will take a problem and they will say, okay, let's assess the problem. Let's take a look at the problem. Let's get the facts about it. Let's talk to people about it and analyze the problem before moving forward. The I stands for interactive. This is how you interact with others and share opinions. So high I's are more extroverted people who are gregarious and persuasive and inspiring. Lower I's are more introverted. They're introspective, reserved, more matter-of-fact and reflective. And so you can generally assess this in a group when you're a group with people as to where people sort of fall on this scale simply by how they behave in a meeting. Are they the first ones to talk? Do they make small talk? Do they mostly listen? Do you hardly hear them talk in the meeting at all? This gives you sort of an insight just from observing behavior. Stabilizing looks at three things: how you tend to pace things in your environment. It also looks at your how you approach being part of a team. So the high S people like a slower pace. They're more patient, predictable, and passive. They are really good on a team. They like being as part of it, part of a team. And they also like for that team to get along and work together well at a high level of harmony and cooperation. People with a lower S score are more competitive. They like to work at a faster pace. They're more active and chaotic and spontaneous. They don't necessarily need to be part of a team. They might like to be sort of a solo person, so like a salesperson maybe. And they tend to be more competitive and like the conflict that being competitive can bring. And then the last dimension is cautious. This is your need for procedures, your preference for established protocols and standards. High C's tend to be perfectionists, very quality focused, cautious, systematic, and careful individuals. Low C's tend to be more daring and challenging and reckless and careless. It's like the difference between an accountant as a high C and a mountain climber as a low C. Generally, high C's like to have a whole lot of procedures and rules and regulations to follow. Lower C's don't like the constraint that those place on them. And like I said, I can go through this, for hours and hours and hours, but I just wanted to give you a flavor, and there's a whole lot of really good information in your reports. So I recommend that you read your reports on this. Nancy said that she really enjoyed it and felt like it was an accurate assessment. I usually get that feedback that it's, 75 to 80% accurate for most people.
Can you talk a little bit about natural versus adaptive?
Sure. Let me go back here. Natural, these are the three colored lines here, the red, yellow, green, and blue. This is your natural behavioral style. So picture your behavior as a flotation device in a lake. It's just floating on the lake and it's sitting there, and that's where it wants to be because it's sort of tethered to the bottom of the lake and it just wants to be there. That's your natural behavioral style. The gray bars indicate your adaptive behavioral style. So if you're being observed or if you're in a crisis situation, this is how your behavior can flex for short periods of time. So it's like that flotation device, the wind blows or a storm comes in and it moves that. It moves it, but it only moves it a certain amount because the flotation device is tethered. Your behavior only moves a certain amount. That's a good analogy, I think. And then when the storm passes, it goes back to its quiescent position. So in this case, this individual, they're generally a very high D, but in a crisis situation, they can flex to a lower D. They can be more contemplative, and they can be more investigative and analytical. It's just that when this crisis passes, they will go back to being a higher D, which somebody who is more decisive makes faster decisions, more snap decisions. So how DISC addresses creative style. DISC is not a creative style measurement, but there are some things that we generally see with relation to behavior and how it indicates your creative style or shines a light on what's sort of going on underneath. So high Ds and high Is tend to be more attracted to opportunities for big change. So something that is more transformational, more visionary, opportunities to do different. Okay. On the other hand, high S's and high C's seem to be more comfortable with incremental change, looking to improve things, make things more efficient, doing better versus doing different. And I wonder, for those of you who took this assessment, does this sort of hold true with you? I saw that there were some people here who had very similar results. We had a lot of high S's and high C's. And for those of you with high S's and high C's, could you weigh in here? Is this something that you feel is sort of accurate with you, that you're more comfortable with the incremental change, improvement, efficiency, doing better, that type of creativity? Luis says, yes, this is accurate. It comes with the two things about the S and the C that sort of point us in that direction. Nancy says she's also high I. Yeah. For those of you who have a combination here, like you're a high I and a high S, think about how that pulls you. Is that pulling you in sort of two directions, or does this mean that you sort of are moving a little bit toward the middle there between adaptive and innovative? High S and high C. So high S, think about the need for harmony. Big change can often upset harmony. It can shake things up, and it could make people feel really uncomfortable. So a lot of times we see that in the high S, that incremental change is more acceptable than the big transformational change. And then high C's rely on that structure. So if the structure is in place, we can tighten the structure, we can improve the structure, and we can make it more efficient and more effective. But big change will break the structure. And if I'm relying on that structure, I don't want to break that structure. So that's why we see that more adaptive change acceptable in the high S's and high C's. I got a lot of good feedback here. Here's an interesting one from Terry. I am a high D supervising a high S. It is not easy. Yeah. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's just not easy because I have expectations that are much higher than someone who needs everything written out, and it's just like slow, and she has to have everything written out, and Post-it notes are all over her wall, and I'm like, get a notebook, put everything in one notebook. So it's just very difficult because my expectation is, because I have to meet goals, okay, and she has to meet clients, and so I have to step back because I want a good relationship with my direct reports, right?
Mhm.
And I can't go in there demand like that. So I have to step back and really use my one-on-ones. Used to be 1 hour per week. It's now 3 hours per week, which is taking my time. But I realized for her to have a relationship with me, that's what we have to do. And it was really hard for me because I expect much more. Okay.
Well, since behavior is the first thing that you see in an individual, behaviors are the things that can really rub us the wrong way. So you just pointed to an instance where a high D and a high S might have trouble interacting. And I'm perfectly willing to go over your results with you individually if you would like. Like I say, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on them today, but I just wanted to use it as a tool to sort of give you some more insight. So if we can all go back to mute, I'm hearing a lot of feedback right now. Thank you. Let's move on here. So let's do a little discussion here. We've gone through this, and I think we've sort of addressed this question a little bit. What do you feel is your creative style? Can I see a show of hands of people who think that they're more adaptive than innovative? So new and improved versus new and different. Okay. I'm getting some hands. Nancy, Melanie, Louise. Yeah, I'm getting some good chats and hand raising. That's fine. How about those of you who are more innovative than adaptive, who like new and different rather than new and improved? Okay, Greg. Jamie. Joan. Jessica likes both. Sandy likes both too. My creative style is a little bit to the innovative side of the middle there. Maxine says, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But Terry points out here that with COVID-19, we all have to be innovative. Wow, that is a huge reality. The amount of change we had to accept, big change, just because of the need to function in a totally new environment. There we go. So this was part of the homework there. Could somebody volunteer, and feel free to speak here, describe a time when you felt the most creative?
Totally unrelated, but my most creative was the first time. I'm not a baker, but I made a carrot cake.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty impressed with myself. And I made it for Thanksgiving for 14 people. And when I woke up the next morning, my husband and their friends had already eaten it with ice cream the night before, so I didn't have any cake to serve on Thanksgiving Day.
Wow. I had carrot cake for my birthday yesterday.
So that's all I got.
Jessica, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I did. Carrot cake's my favorite, by the way. A little jealous. Never made one, but as far as my most creative, we sort of touched on it already. COVID-19 has forced creativity on all of us, I think, to some degree or another. And as a program support staff here at HCC, we had to take what was entirely an in-person programming online overnight. And I'm pretty proud of how we did it. And we did it fast and effectively, but it's a constant, there's constant need for adaptation and innovation as we learn more, as we experience problems. And it's been trying, but exciting. I guess that would be my tale.
Okay, thank you. So, COVID's a great example of this, of a situation where something in our external world changed, a huge dynamic shift in the external world, and then we have to respond to that. And some of you have had to do some things that are probably outside of your comfort zone. So, how hard is it for you to use a creative style or outside of your comfort zone? For those of you who are more adaptive, how hard was it for you to be more innovative, to respond to the big change? Anyone want to volunteer an answer there? When doing new and improved won't work, how hard is it to do new and different? Is it a stressor? So you've noticed that Jessica says she's noticed that it's hard to bring some coworkers along for the ride. So you notice that it might not as be hard for you, but you notice that it can be hard for others. If you're used to like Elise says here, you're used to your established routine, so it can be a lot more difficult to, so it does become a stressor. But Melanie says, hey, it's not much of a stressor if it's my only option left. How true is that? So have you ever encountered a problem that is so far outside of your creative style that you couldn't solve it without extra creativity?
What do you mean by extra creativity?
I mean, the help of somebody who brings something to it that you don't have, that you don't feel that you have. So let me rephrase that because it's causing a little confusion here. Let's say that you confront a problem and that the type of problem lies so far outside of your creative style that you have to bring other people in who might look at it differently and bring in a different perspective and essentially help you reframe the problem in such a way that it can make it easier to solve. Louise says she loves collaboration amongst coworkers to resolve an issue.
I mean, I think I do that a lot, but I frame it differently when I do so, right? It's more about bringing in other stakeholders or other people who have skill sets that I know I'm going to need.
Mm-hmm. This is the magic of group creativity. The way that Curtin defined it was, we bring a lot of creativity and energy to a problem. And a lot of times, if you're used to solving a problem the same way, sometimes when a problem falls outside of that, of your band of comfort, you do need to bring in everyone who can give you a different perspective.
Mhm.
But that in of itself causes an additional set of problems. Because as we've just learned, people manage their own creativity a little differently. So you get people who are high adapters and high innovators looking at the same problem. And a lot of times that creates the spin-off problem of managing your differences. So the way Curtin framed it was problem A and problem B. Problem A is the problem that you're trying to solve. Problem B is the problem that lies between you because you're different, because you think differently, because you have different creativity. And the more energy you have to spend managing the problem between you, the less energy you have to spend on solving the problem A, the problem that you're there to. So That's one of the reasons that I use personality assessments if we're doing a problem solving exercise. If we're focusing on a big problem that a group is trying to solve and I'm facilitating it, we need to understand our different approaches so that we can leverage that. We need to spend less energy on managing the problems between us and more energy on that problem A. So we minimize problem B so that we can maximize our effort on problem A. Does that make sense? Jessica, did you have a question?
No, not a question.
Okay.
I was just saying that that's something that I experienced very acutely in the COVID transition period. I'm a high adapter and I'm highly innovative. But there were tons of people standing in the way of the speed of change that I was comfortable with. And there was, it became an exercise of me adapting to other people's speed in the process. And that was the hardest part of it all, at least for me. For other people, I'm sure, my pressure to request adaptation was stressful for them. So, it's all in perspective, I guess.
I've worked with people who tend to be more visionary. So they will create a vision for the future. And that is sort of their big source of their creativity. Creating that clear vision of the future and then sort of transporting themselves and their thinking to that future. And a lot of times, metaphorically speaking, they find themselves at that future place by themselves because they look back and everyone is still back to where we all started, and they have trouble pulling those people to the new future, to the future where they want to be. And it can be a really frustrating experience. This is one of the benefits in doing the personality assessment with a group, in that you can just understand what is it that is preventing everyone from coming right with me to where we want to be. What is it that's keeping them, resisting this change that we're trying to impart? I call it team awareness. You acquire the team awareness and it starts breaking down the barriers. I want to move on here to this example. My friend Rolf, the one who hosted us for our offsite at Base Realignment and Closure, is a innovation facilitator. And he tells us this story about a project that he did with General Mills back in the early 90s. And this is a great example of how innovation works with a group. General Mills, they wanted to increase the sale of their Wheaties brand cereal. Now, I don't know how many of you eat Wheaties. There are different variations of Wheaties. It's not just the traditional Wheaties that we see Bruce Jenner with here. But they didn't want to add any new flavors. They just wanted to change the packaging. So they conducted an offsite meeting at the Mall of the Americas to stimulate their creativity. A lot of times getting outside of the place that you work every day is a good way of stimulating creativity. And this is why he conducts the School for Innovators in Colorado, because when you go to higher elevation, it makes you feel uncomfortable. A lot of times feeling uncomfortable and adapting to a new setting will help you think differently and help you change your perspective. It's amazing. I spent my first 2 days there with headaches every day because of the lack of oxygen. But you adapt to that. You eat a lot of aspirin and then you adapt to it. And once you adapt to it, your perspective changes. So getting out of their normal workplace and meeting at the Mall of Americas was very important. So somebody had a crazy idea. A crazy idea occurs when you're told, suspend all of your judgment, don't constrain your thinking at all. Just come up with an idea that will solve your problem, but you have absolutely no way of thinking how we can actually do it. So it's just a crazy idea. And in this case, somebody had a crazy idea, and that idea was, we need for the cereal boxes to just jump off of the shelves into their baskets as they're walking by. And that would solve our problem, because most of them would just say, hey, look, Wheaties, I'll buy it. And is it a crazy idea? Yeah, because it solves your problem, but there's absolutely no way that it would happen. They can't just make the cereal boxes jump off the shelves. And when you have a crazy idea, you're tasked to determine what is it about that crazy idea that is valuable, and how could we actually make that happen without it literally happening? So in other words, how can we make it metaphorically happen? So in order to solve that, they split up into groups and they toured the Mall of Americas to see how other businesses package their products. And then they came back and they reported on that. So one group saw this advertisement for an automobile, and it was very visually striking. It was the automobile coming out of this mist. But the display had augmented the car here by putting reflective tape on it, so that it really caught the light and it attracted your eye to it. And they found that this was very significant. It attracted attention to the car coming out of the mist, and it was very dramatic. And it was really impressive, a really impressive display. Another group went into a department store type place and saw how they displayed televisions. And so you've seen this. They'll have, dozens of TVs on shelves, and they will all be showing the same program. And they do it in such a way that you can compare the TVs directly. And you can assess them and you can decide which ones you like. But it's walking by and seeing that motion that attracts your eye to it. And then another group went to a pet store and they said, how do you package, quote unquote, your pets? And the manager said, here's how we do it. And they picked up a puppy and they handed it to the person. And they said, this is how we sell puppies. We get you to hold the puppy, because once you hold the puppy, you don't want to put the puppy down. And it's more likely that you will end up buying the puppy. And that was a very effective sales technique. And that's something very significant that this group brought back. So they were able to sort of integrate their knowledge here. The insights that they got: we must make our products stand out in a sea of similar products. So if you picture the cereal aisle in the store, and you walk through it, it's just, row after row of different cereals, and none of them really stand out. So we must make our products stand out. Motion catches the eye. So if you're walking past a bunch of cereal boxes and one of them had something that attracted your attention and created motion, then that would help them to stand out. And it's something that they knew from their research. If we can get them to pick up a box, they're 90% likely to put it in their basket. So this is how they redefine the idea of the box jumping off the shelf into the basket. You get 90% of that if you can get the people to pick it up and look at it. And so this was their solution. I'm going to show it to you because I was able to find these on eBay. And I'm going to stop sharing. And is there a way for you to make it so that you can just see my screen mainly instead of the sea of different participants. If you can do that, do that. How do we do that? I can't hear you, Joni.
Everybody has their own individual settings, but you can share your screen. Are you going to a website? Is that what you're doing?
No, I've got something right here to show everybody.
Okay, well, that's what you're going to have to do, is just like that. And
Okay.
people can change their settings up in the upper right-hand corner, where you can set it to speaker setting instead of gallery.
Okay, you can active speaker video view. So if you do that, then does my screen come up?
Yep.
So you're just looking, okay. So take a look at this. This is, let me see if there's a better one here. Yeah, let me show you this one. What General Mills did was they put a hologram on their box of Wheaties. And the hologram, because it was around Super Bowl season, was of Super Bowl plays from past Super Bowls. And the hologram has several frames of video encoded. So what you do is you pick up the box and you rotate it, and the person in the hologram moves. So this person is throwing a pass, I think, as you move it. But in order to get it to work, you actually have to pick the box up. So they did different versions of this. This was Roger Staubach. Some of you probably don't remember. This is Steve Young. Here he is throwing a pass in the Super Bowl. And as you see, as I rotate it, he actually throws the pass. So what was happening was people were walking by these boxes of cereal, and they were seeing the motion, and they would pick it up and they would rotate it like this to make the video work. And once they did, they were 90% likely to put the box in their basket and buy. And they were able to increase their sales 7% just by putting these cool, here's Joe Namath, the most overrated quarterback in NFL history. He got on a box. Look at him. He's throwing a touchdown pass, one of the few that he threw. He might be throwing an interception because he had a like the highest interception rate of anybody who's in the Hall of Fame. So anyway, that's how big transformational innovation works. You get a group together, let me get back to grid view here. You get a group together, you break them out of their comfort zone, and then big ideas occur, and then you figure out the best way to implement ideas. It goes from an abstract, messy problem down to a concrete solution. So any questions about that?
Sandy, I just thought that was a good illustration. This is Maxine. One of the things I was thinking about while you were showing that is how the wholesale markets get me all the time in those BJs and Sam's, because they have so many things you can taste when they got something new. They always have somebody there, with the new product, so you can try or taste or, and tell you or demonstrate something. So I think that's something that jumps off the shelf for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, what really gets me about this is that this was unique and it hasn't been done since. And that really surprises me because of how well it worked. But I've never seen holograms on boxes of cereal. This was like in 1992 or 1993 when they did this. I got these boxes off of eBay, and most of them had cereal from 1993 still inside of them. But yeah, these are sort of like collector's items for some people. But nobody has done it since. So I find that really surprising. Any questions about that? Because we're going to move to another section here. Well, I want to talk about a problem-solving model. This is in session 7 of your workbook, starting on page 15. The problem-solving model that we're going to work with is fairly simple. It has 3 phases. Phase 1 is problem identification, where you analyze the problem and then try to redefine the problem in such a way that it clarifies sort of the root cause of what you're looking at. And then phase 2 is decision making. So you come up with ideas and identify alternatives, and then you choose the ideas that have the best chance of solving the problem, and you develop those into solutions. And then phase 3 is planning and organizing. You plan a course of action, and then you implement. And this is a fairly flexible problem-solving model. It's very effective, and there are lots of variations on this. For instance, you can break down phase 2 into an idea subphase and a solution subphase, where you're identifying all sorts of ideas, and then you pick the ideas, and then you develop solutions from those ideas, and then you pick the solutions that you want to implement. Do any of you find that you are attracted to one of these phases more than the other? In other words, if I am giving you one of these phases and say, you're going to be part of this phase, which one would you choose to be part of based on what energizes you?
I'd probably go for phase 1.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm not sure there should be a phase 4 unless phase 3 would be like, I like executing any plan or decision, that's been put together. So I don't know whether or not there needs to be a 4th phase, but I like to execute whatever's been put together. But I'm attracted to the planning and organizing if it's part of the implementation process. I like that executing.
Yeah, that's in phase 3, implementation. That's where you lay out a plan of action, and then you say, who's going to do what?
Execute. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
For those of you who are attracted to phase 1, why are you attracted to phase 1?
I personally do not do well when I come in the middle of a problem and then they still haven't even identified the problem yet. And I'm kind of, they're bringing you in and they're like, okay, well, this is what we're doing. And I always have to go back. Well, why did we do it that way? I like to start at the beginning and really look at a lot of different perspectives and to figure out the best and define the real problem. Because a lot of times what one person thinks the problem is, the other person might not think that's the problem. And I'm like, well, no, that's not what I heard or saw or whatever. I feel like I have to be from the get-go. For me personally, bringing me in the middle to make decisions on something I never understood from the beginning really messes me up. I don't enjoy it, so it doesn't.
I tend to gravitate towards phase 1. I like to spend a lot of time assessing the problem itself. For those of you who are attracted to phase 2, what is it about phase 2 that really energizes you?
I like phase 2 mainly because of the fact that it's the team that you're working with, and they've identified phase 1. And as a supervisor, I'd like them to submit their ideas, and then we can go into phase 2. But I want everyone to be involved in whatever the problem is, because I may think one way, 3 or 4 people may think the other way. So I kind of just put the problem out there and see what kind of feedback I get before I go into phase 2.
Yeah, what I find is that whichever phase you're attracted to, you want to spend the majority of your time and energy on that phase. And let's say that I said you only have a week to go through this entire process, all 3 phases. How many, if you are attracted to phase 1, do you think that you would spend more of your time, more of that week on phase 1? Do you think that if you were attracted to phase 2, do you think that you would spend more of your time on phase 2?
Are these rhetorical questions?
These are actual questions that I'd like you to weigh in on based on you.
I think that makes sense, just because if you're setting the agenda right, you tend to focus on what you value as more important.
Mm-hmm. Do you find yourself, or do you find that you observe that people will tend to short circuit any of these phases when they solve problems?
Right. Yes.
Give me an example.
Oh yeah, a phase 3 person would like to do that, because sometimes you can stay in phase 1 and 2 too long, weighing the pros and the cons, and you never get to a plan of action. So that's how I do it.
And I would like to add, I think it takes some flexibility as well, because again, what you said, Sandy, is so crucial, is that if we value phase 1 with a greater percentage, or phase 2 or phase 3, we'll tend to focus on those, I think, more. Whereas I think it takes some adaptability and flexibility to identify, okay, we only have a week here. And although I value this one more, we do need to look at alternative solutions and plan that course for action. And then, really kind of set apart not just what I value, but what's important to make sure that the problem gets solved.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I was sort of getting at here. My feeling about this process is this. If you start out going in the wrong direction, you will tend to not come up with a great solution. So you do need to spend time on phase 1 to make sure that you have identified the issues and focused on the root problems that are really causing the root issues that are really causing the problem, so that you can make sure that you're focusing on the right problems. So you do need to spend time in phase 1. But a lot of times, and I'm going to hit this here in a second, a lot of times people who love that phase 1 process where you're discovering things will lose all of their energy when they move on to phase 2 and then phase 3. They will want to disengage because it's time to solve a new problem. I don't need to be part of this action plan. I just love assessing problems. People who really attracted to phase 2 love the idea process, coming up with new and different ideas, really pushing their creative juices. And then again, when it comes to the actual implementation, they tend to lose energy. And people who love phase 3 can be really impatient with people who love phase 1 and 2. Because as you say, they like to, get things done. They need to really push forward. And as a result, they can be really impatient with, I don't need to focus that much on the problem and the ideas. We just need to get out there and make things happen. So it can be a real stressor, especially when you assemble a group and you've got people who are attracted to all, one of these phases. You've got different people in the group who are attracted to different phases. So again, you increase your self-awareness and your team awareness if you understand that about the group. So this does give us a little bit of insight on this. Again, I tend to make generalizations. You might not find yourself feeling this way because behaviors interact in a dynamic and complex manner. But we do see that high Ds and high Cs gravitate towards solutions and implementation. And they might not want to spend a whole lot of energy on phase 1. High Ds and high Cs, the Ds really want to get going and fix this and get in and push through that problem. So they might rely on their intuition to generate, the solutions that they just know will work, and let's get to it. High Cs, again, really appreciate that structure. And within that structure, getting to an implementation phase can be a very quick process. But as a result, they might want to short circuit that beginning part of the process. High Is and high S's can gravitate more towards problems and ideas, but they might lose energy when it's time to implement solutions. I find myself in this second group here more than anything, because I am so energized by phase 1 and phase 2 that I lose all of my energy when it comes to the solutions. So I have to sort of actively manage my energy. If I know that I need to be focused at some point on the implementation part of this, I need to understand that I need to keep some energy in reserve, because I can't lose my focus when we come to phase 3. I have to be just as engaged in my role in phase 3 as I am in phase 1 and phase 2. So do we have any questions about the problem solving? The things that I want you to get out of this: there's no one right way to solve a problem. We call this the convergent funnel. 1 + 1 = 2. This is how we learn how to solve problems in school. There is one solution to the problem that you have, but in real life, there's no one right way to solve a problem. There are many solutions that are possible, and some are better than others, and your skill as a problem solver depends on your expertise with the tools and your knowledge of how to use them. So that's one of the things we want to really accomplish today. And my recommended resource for this is the book that Rolf wrote, The 7 Levels of Change, that goes through this in a lot of detail and looking at each one of the phases as a divergent convergent process. We explore possibilities, which is divergent. We come up with lots of possibilities, and then we converge when we decide what to do with those possibilities. So we will explore lots of different alternatives, but at the end we'll only pick a few of them to implement, a few of them to proceed. And each one of those problems, ideas, solutions, and implementation have a divergent and a convergent piece. So, do we have any questions about this process? If not, I want to hit the last part of our workshop today, which is defining the problem. We're going to learn some different ways to define problems. This is the first phase, and this gets back to what I said earlier. You cannot work on a problem if you don't know what it is. So you spend some time and energy examining the problem to make sure that you can target the root causes and make sure that the ideas that you come up with in the future are going to address the real problems. Problems can be very messy. They can be very concrete. They can be anywhere in between. So you can't work on it, though, if you don't know what the problem is. So resist the tendency to short circuit that phase 1. Resist the tendency to start working on the problem as soon as you know that it exists. Instead, develop an understanding of the problem. So you dig deeper than the symptoms by attacking the root causes. That way we can create higher quality solutions. This will make sure that the solutions that you come up with will resolve the problem more easily. And you also know that you're taking on a worthwhile problem when you go through this phase. Here's an example of a very messy problem statement that a client of mine was working on at one point. I was teaching him how to be a better facilitator, and he was facilitating a group of cybersecurity experts that were pulled together to come up with some grant proposal ideas. And when you're developing a grant proposal, you have to highlight the problem that you're trying to attack. And they had this big messy problem, and I will read this to you. with an ultimate goal to secure and support cognitive activities, decision-making, analytical judgments that may be vulnerable to incorrect, incomplete, or misinformation in cyber context. We will address the effects of both bad judgments and bad information that may lead someone towards a bad judgment, purposeful misinformation that may drive someone towards a bad judgment, and bad judgments that may result from either or both natural cognitive biases or explicit adversarial manipulation. We will explore means to mitigate these effects. We will decision-making processes at risk and methods for restoring trust once lost. Human behavior, which follows a decision-making process that results in judgments, requires examination. We will consider the role of AI, human and cyber context in decision-making and its influence, the accuracy of human behavior modeling, the role of humans and machines as advisors of each other, leveraging bias to the defender's advantage in securing against an adversary, educational requirements to strengthen the security of cognitive activities, and more. Can you think of a messier problem that they're trying to resolve here? I looked at this and I'm like, God, this is awful. This is so messy. How many problems do they touch on in there? Dozens. There are literally dozens, and the problems have problems. You know, this is so messy. They went through a problem examination procedure, like we're going to learn today, and they were able to make this very abstract, messy problem a lot more concrete by focusing on 4 areas. And those 4 areas are this. They redefine the problem as 4 problems. How to detect attacks and vulnerabilities on cognitive systems, influence mechanisms, and disinformation. How to mitigate attacks after detection, exploiting or taking advantage of attacker biases, and awareness education within social media concerning misinformation and those who wish to exploit. So they were able to take that big, messy statement and make it a lot more concrete. So do you better understand what they're trying to accomplish in these 4 bullets than you did that mess up above it? You don't have to be a cybersecurity professional to understand this, because, I mean, we've been talking about misinformation in, with regard to the election, for instance, for weeks and weeks and weeks. This is what they're going after. So can you better understand what they're targeting now that they've gone through a problem analysis process? This is sort of this is where you begin, and this is the result. And this is your goal in going through a problem analysis process, is to get to these more concrete root causes that you can now focus your creativity on. I'm going to give you 8 tools here to help you assess problems. Rephrasing the problem, exposing and challenging assumptions, using facts, growing your thinking, shrinking your environment temporarily, practicing multiple perspectives, turning it upside down, and frame the problem purposely and positively. So the first tool that I want you to use in your arsenal is to rephrase the problem. And all of these examples are highlighted in your workbook there with some additional things that you can do on your own. But here's the general technique: is you write the problem statement as you understand it, and then you just start playing with it. You substitute words in the phrase to give it a little different meaning, and then you assess it. So maybe you start out with the phrase, our production costs have increased, and that's the problem that you have immediately in front of you. So you start playing with it, and you determine, hey, our sales are down slightly from last year. Our customer volume is down from last year. Wages have stayed the same. Production costs are the same from last year. And in doing this, you start getting a different perspective on the problem. So maybe it's not the production costs that are the problem. Maybe it's the sales that's the problem. The customer volume is down. So maybe there's something about our product that is turning people off. So it helps you sort of in the rephrasing process, it helps you change your perspective on the problem. It just takes a little time to do this, and it's a skill that you can develop. This is something that we did last year, and Greg, again, has seen this before. Problem restatement is a really good conversational skill when you are helping somebody solve a problem. So I'm recommending this sort of 5-step process for you when you're talking to somebody. When somebody comes at you with a problem, you have them state the problem to you, and then you restate it just as they have stated it. And then you ask them to tell you more about the problem. And after you hear more about the problem, then you restate it in a way that clarifies and helps get to the root using your perspective. You're looking for a yes. If the answer is no, you say, tell me more, and then you repeat until you get to the yes. And in a group, I would do this with, different people at the table so that you could exercise this yourself. But I will give you an example. If somebody in the group has a problem that they're currently experiencing, it could be a work problem, it could be a problem in their personal life, I need a volunteer. And we'll run through this. Who wants to volunteer? Nobody wants to volunteer. Come on. You've got to
Volunteer.
Okay, I hear a volunteer.
Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
What's the problem? State the problem to me.
Oh, I have to come up with a problem. I thought you were going to give it to me, and we were going to.
Oh.
Now I have to think. Okay. Give me a sec. Ooh, I got nothing.
You got
Anybody got
nothing. Nobody here has any problems. That's great. That is awesome.
I have a problem.
Okay.
Okay, my problem is I cannot find eligible participants in Cecil County for the CSEP program.
So you can't find eligible candidates in Cecil County for the CSEP program.
Right.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, we have a certain quota that we need to meet in each county. Okay. In Cecil County, we have to serve 13 people in the program year. Currently, we only have 1 enrolled because we lost 3 already this year for other reasons. There is an eligibility table that they have to pass. Okay. And it's also very hard to recruit there. Okay.
Okay. So do you really mean that the quota that you're trying to meet is an unreasonable quota?
No, it's based upon the census, and Congress mandates it.
Okay. So tell me more then. If the quota is unreasonable, then that means that there is agreement that you should be able to meet that quota. So tell me some more about the problem.
I think some of the problem is I live in Rockville, Maryland. My office is in Baltimore City, and I don't know Cecil County. I'm not a local girl.
Okay.
Okay. The other problem is right now, due to the high restrictions with the governor and your county executive, it's hard to get there and even find a public place to meet eligible people. Okay. And the other problem is truly because we count certain pensions and things of that nature for income eligibility, we find people who are not income eligible because they're retirees from like the proving ground and stuff like that.
So are you saying that your lack of familiarity with Cecil County prevents you or is an impediment to you reaching out to eligible people?
I believe so.
Okay, so if you were more familiar with Cecil County, it would help you create a better outreach strategy.
I believe so.
Okay, so what we did here was we started out with a general problem, and in the space of a few minutes with a few questions, we got it more concrete and achieved clarity just from having an interaction.
Right.
Would somebody like to try this? Would somebody like to try this with a different problem? Do you think that you know enough about it that you could practice this with your coworkers? I hope so. You can say it in the chat if you want. I want to move on to if we're not going to do this one any further, I want to move on to this next one, which is challenging assumptions. Challenging assumptions is a really great tool. You're right, Christopher, it will take practice. And I suggest that you start practicing this, because I use it all the time when I'm facilitating. It's just anytime that anybody comes to me with a problem, I automatically go into the rephrasing mode. And it does take practice, but once you practice it, it becomes second nature. Challenging assumptions is a great tool that helps you come up with real new and interesting perspectives on the problem. So you write a list and include as many assumptions as you can think of, especially the obvious ones that are related to the problem that you're focusing on. And then test each assumption and find out if some of them are actually wrong or if you impose them on yourself. And the way that you test them is you state the opposite or you reverse the subject and the object. Those are two real easy ways to test the assumptions. So this is one that I did with a church a few years ago. They were looking to increase their church attendance. And we listed all the assumptions. The assumption here, people come to the church, the Roman Missal guides the service, liturgical music is used, the clergy delivers a sermon at some point, it's offered on a Sunday, and minimal interaction with clergy outside of the services. So we reversed each one of those. So instead of people coming to the church comes to the people. Okay? So is our problem that our location is not optimum and that we need to figure out how to deliver our services in a way that are more closer to our target community audience? The Roman Missal guides the services. The Roman Missal doesn't guide the service. Okay? Is our problem that the Roman Missal is antiquated and doesn't attract people and doesn't really stimulate and energize people in such a way that they would want to become part of what we're doing? Liturgical music is used. What about non-liturgical music? Is our problem that people look at our old liturgical music, which is based on classical music, as being old-fashioned or stodgy, and that we look to opportunities to use more modern music in our services? The clergy delivers a sermon. We flip that to the clergy leads a discussion. Do people want to be part of an interaction with the pastor instead of just listening to them talk? The church, we do our services on a Sunday. Let's not do them on a Sunday. So is our problem that Sunday is such a burden to some people? There's too many things that get in the way that we should look for opportunities to do things on a different day. And then multiple interactions throughout the week. Is it that people want to see and interact with clergy at more times than just Sunday, but the clergy person is just unavailable? Do we need to set up more times, more interactions? So each one of those reframes the problem in a different way. And you have to, from that, analyze each one of the problems that comes out of this reversed assumption and see, is this really getting at the root cause? But when you reverse assumptions like this, it shines the light on the problem in such a way that potential, refinements to the problem just sort of jump out at you. And it's also sort of a way of forcing your thinking to change, forcing you from being more adaptive to being more innovative. Have any of you ever used this technique before? You can say it in the chat. A lot of leaders, people in leadership, will use this tool on a regular basis. It's a good leadership tool. It helps leaders break out of the status quo and come up with new approaches. So use facts. This is sort of the analytical part of problem solving. You gather facts and data related to the problem, and you research the problem. You say, who else has faced the same problem? Who has faced analogous problems? You investigate the factors that contribute to the problem, the processes, the people. You ask a lot of questions, what, who, why, when questions. And just going through the fact-finding phase can put a whole lot of clarity on, the problem itself. The more that you understand about the problem, the clearer the root causes become. So this is a real analytical approach to defining the problem, using facts. Grow your thinking. So problems are often related to other problems. And so you can consider the problem as part of something larger. So to do this, you make the problem more general. You say, what is this problem connected to? What is this an example of? Where have we seen this problem before? This can give you insight on ways to solve or clarify the problem in ways that other people have already done, and helps you come up with analogous ways of thinking about it. Shrink your environment temporarily, and you do this by splitting the problem into smaller pieces to give you an understanding of the bigger problem. So let's say that you need to increase your income by $2,000 a month. Look at where have you been spending money now? What can we cut back on? Can I put in more hours at work? Can I ask for a pay increase? Can I do some odd jobs? Can I stop doing certain things like going out for coffee? Can I stop eating out? So you're refining your lifestyle in such a way that can both reduce your costs and increase your income. And you do that sort of by splitting the problem up into smaller pieces. Practice multiple perspectives. We're going to see this again next week. Different people have different perspectives, as we have learned in going through the first part of the training today. Put yourself in their shoes. So how would a customer look at this problem? How about your sales team, your courier, different people in your organization? How would your spouse see the problem? A former teacher, a business association? What about people with different creative styles? Learn how to put yourself in their shoes to get different perspectives on the problem. Stepping outside of your creative preference. If you're an innovator, how would an adapter look at this problem? If you're an adapter, how would an innovator look at this problem? So learn how to practice multiple perspectives. And then turn it upside down. One powerful perspective for defining your problem is to look at it from the reverse direction. If you want more of something, for instance, figure out what you get less of as a result. And you change your perspective and consider things from angles you had not yet considered, and then you consider the consequences from that. Then reframe the problem purposefully and positively. So reframe what you think is the problem into a positive and engaging question. So instead of saying we need our employees to quit smoking because smokers are driving up cost of our benefit plan, flip that around into something positive. How can we encourage our employees to live long, healthy lives and live to be happy people? Reframing it really helps you change your perspective and gives you clarity. I want to give you an example of this from a colleague of mine who coaches professionals like I do. And he was coaching a salesperson in South Africa who was having a hard time meeting their sales quota. And it was in how he was framing the problem that was causing him the problem of not meeting the sales quota, because he was looking at it as, I need to sell a bunch of units. I need to sell X number of units a month in order to meet my quota and make my income. And the problem with looking at that from that perspective for him was that he doesn't care about making money. He was not driven to make money. He was driven to help other people. So it just so happened that the item they were selling was heart defibrillators. So for him, it was an idea of flipping the definition of what he was doing. So instead of saying, I need to sell enough of these units to make quota, he flipped it to, how can I sell more of these heart defibrillators to save other people's lives? Because he was motivated by a sense of altruism, a sense of helping others. So he knew that anytime he sold one unit, it resulted in, on average, saving 2 people's lives. So he reframed it from selling units to saving lives, and it cleared the entire problem up for him. And he was able to figure out how to move forward in such a way that he could, at the same time, meet his sales quota by helping save lives. So he reframed it, what he was doing, in such a way that it clarified his problem. So we don't have a lot of time to go through these. So I want you to, we're just going to do one of these. I think this one is a good one. Revenue in the company is down 15% last year. So you can use your chat box. Let's rephrase the problem. First of all, let's try rephrasing the problem in such a way that clarifies it. So play with that statement and rewrite it in the chat box in such a way that you think clarifies it. Okay, Desiree says sales have decreased from last year. Okay. Can we rephrase it? Expenses are up. Okay. That's another way you could look at it. We don't understand how to maintain last year's high revenue rates. Think of all the things that contribute to revenue. We did not meet goals. Now ask the question, why? What are some of the things that could be contributing to not meeting goals? People don't have money, so the market is down. Okay. New sales initiatives. Costs are too high, too many staff, not enough. Unrealistic projections. Competition is stronger. That's a real good one. You know, maybe the competition came out with a different product or service, and it's eating into your market share. What else? Shifts in the market, restructuring or structural problems, cost too high, competition, market saturation. We need to identify new areas to target for sales opportunities. So new markets. Target market has changed. This is a really good one to apply what you know about, you know, where have you seen this before? Because all sorts of industries go through this. You know, it could be anything from big, like customer buying trends have changed. Like think about IBM. When they, you know, got essentially they got taken to the cleaners when the PCs took over from the mainframes. You know, there's a really big shift, but it could be something really concrete and mundane. You know, your costs might be up. Customer buying trends have changed. Okay. So you see there's lots of different ways to rephrase the problem. So that was very good. Let's see if there's staff meetings in your department are perceived as ineffective. Let's do the challenge assumptions piece here. What are some of the assumptions that you would make? You all have staff meetings. What are some of the assumptions that you would make regarding your staff meetings right now? No agenda. People are not listening or engaging. Low participation. Too long. Okay, let's flip some of those. Don't end on time. How could you challenge those assumptions and flip them in such a way that gives you insight into problems that you can address? For instance, let's take low participation. So if participation is low, let's flip that to participation is high. So how does that give you clarity on the problem that you're trying to solve regarding ineffective staff meetings? Right. Alan comes up with, how do we enlist engagement? That's good. You start now focusing on how do you make staff meetings more engaging, okay? So no agenda. You flip that to everybody gets an agenda. Present an agenda prior to the meeting that allows prep time. Give everyone a chance to speak. So what are we flipping here? We're flipping participation, or people are not listening or engaging. We flip that. A lot of times, yeah, when you giving everyone a chance to speak becomes sort of the responsibility of whoever's running the meeting to note these things and make sure that they're calling on people who aren't necessarily speaking. Remember, when I went over the disc, there are people who will naturally speak, more extroverted people who will come up with, you know, talking about the problem, talking about solutions, whatever, and there are people who will naturally listen. So how do you engage the people who naturally listen? Allow for input. Okay, so these are really good. You've sort of flipped these, and you're shining lights on different ways to make staff meetings more engaging and more effective. Alternate facilitators. How many of you use facilitators in your meetings? A lot of times, I've been in meetings where it's just people getting together and talking. There's nobody really facilitating the meeting. But very rarely, having a facilitator can help all these things that you've pointed out here. Okay, so we've gone through 8 of these, and all of them, you can use them sort of in tandem with one another. You can use them sequentially, and each one of them needs to be practiced. So do you have any questions? Let's do this, unmute yourself. Do you have any questions about any of these? Are there one or more of them that you think that you would gravitate towards more than others? Feel free to speak up.
I kind of like the practice multiple perspectives, just because, kind of like we were talking about earlier, our assumptions that we tend to make. Sometimes knowing the other side of the story or knowing where somebody comes from changes your assumptions into a factual perspective. So you can actually say, oh, we're actually, like for us, we work with clients who are struggling, and we may not always and we can assume why, but once you know their story, even though everybody has one, and we try not to focus on that in our business because everybody's got a story, it really tends to let you open your eyes up to find a better solution for them by knowing the facts.
Right. That's a really good insight. Jessica says she gravitates towards 1 and 2. Jessica, why do you gravitate towards those 2?
I guess I gravitate toward those sort of instinctually to make sure I understand the problem before I move on to anything else. So that's, I feel like I guess, you've gone over it quite a bit, but like people will state a problem one way, but it's not truly what the problem is. It's just, the part of the problem that affects them most directly, and not necessarily the something that needs to be solved, because there could be a chain reaction going on where another piece of the connectors needs address, and that solves automatically, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Elise says she uses rephrasing the problem quite a bit. How do you use that, Elise?
Basically what Jessica just said, so I can make sure that I understand what the overall problem is, and if it's a chain reaction situation or something like that. And that will kind of help me better focus my ideas towards moving towards solutions.
When you can rephrase the problem in a conversation with whoever has the problem, you are also creating rapport. So if you're working with a client and you can make a connection with them by showing them that you understand their problem, just restating that problem to them creates a connection. But then listening to them, getting that insight from listening to them, and then rephrasing it in such a way that clarifies it for them can really help build rapport. And that's one of the reasons I use that number 1 a whole lot. That is sort of my go-to because it accomplishes several things. I tend to gravitate towards 1, 2, 3, and 4. I use those a whole lot, 1 more so than others. But I definitely have my preference. And I think that in using these, I recommend that everybody start using these and then figure out which ones work the best for you. And, those are the tools that you'll be using on a more regular basis. And then discover what your coworkers are using, which one of them people on the call here, or just people that you work with, start to observe what they're using and see if they use anything that's different than you, so that now you can sort of help one another out. You can bring them in to use their, to leverage their tools. They can bring you in to leverage your tools. So are there any other questions or comments about this? I want to get you guys out of here.
This is Greg. I just want to toss out one little thing that I picked up from the Federal Department of Labor, which is when you're looking at problems, sometimes it helps to ask why on several levels. So they refer to this as, I think it's 5 whys or 6 whys. So they'll identify a problem. Well, why is that a problem? Well, that usually elucidates a new problem. You can ask, why is that a problem? And why is that? And why is that? And it helps get down to the root cause.
That's a really great idea. I actually thought about putting that in this. I felt it would. 5 whys is such a great tool, and it's one to sort of you can leverage it in number 1. You can also leverage it in number 3 as you're doing your research, asking people questions. Do a Google search on 5 whys. It's out there. It's a great tool. There's plenty written about it, and it really helps drill down into, helps you get, illuminate the root causes of things, just as Greg said here. Okay, so let's revisit what we've done today. We went through understanding creativity and innovation, did a little bit of self-awareness. We learned the problem-solving model, and we learned how to use some tools to help define problems. In Module 2, which is next Wednesday, we'll learn how to generate ideas, and we will learn implementation. So those of you who said that you didn't want to attend the next session, feel free to attend. I'm going to send out the link to everyone. If you can't attend, we're going to record that session as well, and then we will post it, and you can look upon it later. Otherwise, you also have the workbook that has all of that material in sessions 9 and 10 in it. So at this point, I'm going to have a final call for questions. Oh, thank you very much, Maxine. I appreciate it. Thank you, Desiree. Thank you, Jessica. I hope you got something out of it. I hope everybody got something out of it, something that you can put to practical use. And as I said, if you would like to, for me to go over your Disc Plus profile with you, I'd be happy to. Just send me an email and let me know. Joan, you have anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. Just thank you, Sandy, for doing this.
Okay, this is a lot of fun. I really love doing this type of stuff. And
how is the next one? Is it going to be the same? Or do you see the next one building on this?
This one, I tried to make it because, we did have at least one person who said that they were only going to attend. I'm going to do a brief review on at the next one, but it is more of a standalone. We're going to focus on ideas and implementation. So, they can look at the workbook, learning about, go through session 2 and session 8, and then prior to that, and then we'll start, doing ideas, learning how to generate ideas from sessions 9 and 10, and that's what we'll be focusing on.
Is it worthwhile for people on this call to participate in that?
I think most people on this call are going to participate. They signed up for both sessions.
Okay.
A few people didn't, and that's why I say I'm leaving this open for everyone. If you'd like to participate, some people might change their minds based on what we did today, and can see the value of doing it. But for those of you who aren't, can't because you got a conflict, we are going to be recording the next session, and we'll post that as well. So thanks everybody for coming, and I hope to hear from you soon. And for those of you who are attending the next session, we'll see you bright and early Wednesday morning. I'll be sending the link out to that later.
Thank you, Sandy. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Christopher. Take care.